Hey everybody, dead air in an empty chair. It's Ted Drozdowski from Premier Guitar. We're going to try to do our Road Dog #2 today, my monthly live stream on the Premier Guitar Facebook page. And today's topic is haunted places I have stayed and played. Are you ever in a place where you feel like something weird's happened, and it's got this residual energy, this kind of really weird vibe? I've been there more than once or twice in my life. And, well, here's a couple of stories from some of those places, When I was a little kid, my whole family's from Pennsylvania. When I was a little kid, whenever the family would get together there, everybody would tell ghost stories and stories about Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings right in that area where my whole family comes from, like Central Eastern PA. I don't know why Central Eastern PA supposedly had all that stuff back then, if you believe in it, but I do know that sometimes those stories would scare the absolute crap out of me when I was a little kid. And I'd go from my aunt's house to the car, kind of looking around, expecting that Bigfoot was going to show up and rip my arm off and club me to death with it, as Bigfoot is known to do. Anyway, years later, I grew a fairly thick skin about that stuff, and I was generally healthily skeptical. And then I started playing in Pennsylvania a lot, kind of in the 2000 00s. There was a 3-year period when I played down there intensely, especially in the Lebanon County area. And there were 3 venues in particular that were haunted, everyone said, that I played at. The first one was probably the one I went to the most. It was a place called the Farmer's Hope Inn in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Absolutely great joint. Awesome people, awesome food, great audience, loved going back there. Probably played there once a month. And I'd been there for about a year, and I started noticing these placards on the table for the Pennsylvania Paranormal Society coming in. I'm like, what's going on here, man? Nothing weird about this place. It's just a beautiful old country inn, owned by these really nice people, Tim and Terry Brown. And it was all good vibes every time we were there. Loved it. But anyway, I asked Tim about it, and Tim told me that the Paranormal Society was coming in because the hauntings were getting worse. I'm like, what hauntings are getting worse? I don't know anything about this. And he said that apparently sometimes visages would appear to people, and there'd be strange sounds. And he said, and sometimes there's like this steam train whistle. I'm like, hold it, a steam train whistle? Because I had heard that steam train whistle late at night, and I figured, there's a tourist railroad in Strasburg, PA, that has steam locomotives, the Strasburg Railroad. And I figured, well, it was just the steam locomotive. And to me, maybe they're doing some kind of night repairs on the tracks or something. And to me, that was totally cool because I'm a railroad nut anyway. So if I hear a steam whistle in the middle of the night, I'm delighted. I think it's a bonus. But then Tim mentioned that was about 25 miles away. And I got to admit, I don't think the whistle would carry that far. So I guess maybe I'd heard that whistle. But I didn't think anything of it. And then about a year and a half after that, these Paranormal Society things are happening there on a regular basis. But we're coming and doing our gigs and having a great time. And then one night I was with my drummer, Matt Snow, at the time. And I'm sacked out in bed A. Matt is sacked out in bed B after the gig. And I have a tendency to just dive right off to sleep. So I'm snoozing. And all of a sudden I hear, whoa, what the hell? And I wake up. And Matt is sitting up in bed, and his eyes are really wide. I'm like, what's going on, man? He goes, were you just over here blowing in my ear? I'm like, man, I like you and all, but I'm not going to go blow in your ear. And apparently he told me that, as he was sleeping, he kind of had this feeling of his ear being tickled. And then he kept hearing the sound of someone blowing in his ear, and he was kind of trying to fight it, half asleep, half awake, thinking it was a dream. And then he went to swat at the side of his head, and when he did that, all the covers were ripped off of his bed. So suddenly he was just laying there in bed, and all the covers were pulled off by some manner he did not understand. So that's when he jumped up and yelled, whoa. And that's the closest I ever came to one of the ghosts there. I guess by proxy it was through Matt, who was apparently visited by one of these ghosts in the middle of the night. Another place we played is this place called Boob's Brewery, and that's spelled B-U-B-E' brewery, and that's in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. Now, at Boob's Brewery, it's this really cool archaic old building. It looks like a castle. It had been a brewery since the 1800s, and it has this really hip kind of speakeasy vibe. Well, with all these hidden catacombs, and if you want to go down to where the brewery is, you have to go down this very thin staircase, 90 feet underground. Really a crazy joint. But, great place, great crowd, great food, good vibes every time we played there. But I could not help but noticing every time we went that on the walls there were all these pictures of mysterious floating orbs and glowing sections of stuff that were in rooms that I clearly recognized as being common spaces in the place. So I finally asked the manager, Sam, what the deal was, and he said, oh yeah, those are all taken here, and those are the ghosts. And I'm like, yeah, right, the ghosts, whatever, you know. Well, they used to put the band up, just like we got put up at the Farmer's Hope Inn, and one night they were putting us up at the, well, all the rooms were theme rooms, which is pretty wild. They had like a tiki room with a real waterfall. They had a Southwestern motif room. And I was with my buddy from Cambridge, Massachusetts, the drummer Larry Dersh. This was back when my band was a duo, my band Scissorman. And one night, Larry got the good princess room, and I got the bad princess room. The good princess, they were adjoining rooms with the door connecting them, which we kept closed. But anyway, the good princess room was kind of all sweetness and light. It was kind of like Cinderella after she married the prince. You know, everything was done in white, beautiful curved mirror, little birds and things all over the place. You know, really pretty, nice frilly covers, a frilly canopy, all that stuff. The bad princess room was dark, and the only lights in there were these electric candles. And the bed had a bedboard that had manacles on it for recreational use. And on the ceiling there was a mirror that had spiders kind of attached into it. You know, they're actually made into the fabric of the glass. So it had kind of a different kind of vibe. You know, that was where the naughty princess would spend her evenings. Anyway, I'm in the bad princess room, and as I mentioned a second ago, I'm kind of a railroad nut. So I can't quite go to sleep, so I'm reading this railroad magazine. And I keep seeing the light flicker on and off under the door, under the space under the door from Larry's room. And it's like on, then 2 minutes later it's off, then like a minute and a half later it's on, and then it's off, and I'm thinking, what the hell is Larry doing over there, you know? Why is he screwing with the lights? And the next morning, Larry told me that he had gone to bed, shut the lights off, and then a few minutes later, the lights turned on, and he went over and checked, and the light switch was up. So he shut it off, and he went back to bed, and then it happened again. So he went over and shut it off, and he went over there, and the light switch was on again. You know, it turned on again, and the light was illuminated, the room was illuminated again. And this was kind of flipping him out a little bit. He's like, man, this must be one of the ghosts. And, you know, he did that a few more times. And then finally, when the light shot on about the 5th or 6th time, he said, okay, enough already. I believe in you. Can I please go to sleep? And the light shut off by itself. And he had a good night's sleep. In all the rooms in that place upstairs, there were little diaries next to the beds where you could include your ghostly encounters. So I believe Larry included his ghostly encounter. But again, that wasn't me. That was all secondhand. The third experience, also in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, in Marietta, was the time that I may have seen a ghost. And for me, like, seeing a ghost is perfect, because when I was a kid, Universal horror movies from the 30s, 40s, and AIP and Hammer films from the 50s and 60s, those are like what I had for breakfast cereal, you know? So I was totally into that stuff, plus all my relatives telling those stories. Anyway, Railroad House, Marietta, Pennsylvania. Beautiful place. Very nice old world railroad hotel. I think it was a hotel along the Pennsylvania Railroad line where folks would stay as they traveled. But apparently a place that had its share of prostitution, gambling, and mayhem over the years. And we go in and we're playing the gig, and of course those Pennsylvania Paranormal Society placards are on the table again. So we get done playing the gig, and I asked the owner, who was a very nice guy, I said, hey man, so what's the deal with this? What's going on here? And he goes, oh, this place is really haunted. There might be 8 or 10 ghosts here. I'm like, really? And he said, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of weird violence here, and he tells us a few stories. And he told us that, this was a Friday, he tells us that on Wednesday there was the latest ghost sighting, which was a couple was staying in an upstairs room, the one at the far end of the back porch, the elevated second-story back porch. And as they were asleep, the covers kept getting pulled off the bed. And the woman kept thinking that the dude was pulling the covers down or edging them or rolling, as us dudes are likely to do, right, ladies? We steal the covers all the time. Anyway, at least that's what my wife tells me, steal the covers all the time. Anyway, finally she grabbed the covers and pulled them up really tight, and as she was holding onto them, they got yanked out of her hand onto the floor. And she jumped up and screamed, and they saw an outline of a woman standing at the front of the bed that then dissipated. So I'm like, okay, cool, great story. And then the guy says, and I don't even want to tell you what happened in your room. Now, when someone tells you, you know, they don't want to tell you what happened in your room, of course, you then need to know what happened in your room. So I'm like, man, you can't do that. Now you have to tell me what happened. He goes, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And he said, well, you know, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was some sort of a conflict between a couple of guys, and one guy bludgeoned the other guy to death and stole his money. I'm like, okay, so someone was bludgeoned to death in my room. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I'm going to sleep really well tonight. So the gig's over, and I was there with my friend this time playing my drummer buddy, R.L. Halsman, who's now in Nashville Pussy. And R.L. and I are both pretty, it was a pretty early gig. It's like 11 o'clock. We're not tired. So we go sit on the elevated back porch. We have ourselves a smoke for a while. And we're looking out on the fields, and it was really beautiful. Just like this carpet of fireflies as far as we could see. But those were the stars. It was this beautiful starry, starry low night with a high, great sky and beautiful fields, beautiful woods, a real train echoing way off in the distance. And we're kind of hanging there, smoking up for a while, and, just bullshitting. We're about 45 minutes into it. And at one point, my eye is kind of pulled to the left. And there's a room that has a window that faces out on the porch off to the left. And I see this gray outline of a woman in a hoop skirt go by the window slowly with her head kind of facing straight ahead. She has a bonnet. And the weird thing about it is the outline is gray and she seems illuminated from the back, almost backlit, like stage lighting. That kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I'm not saying anything, and we have been smoking, so I'm not saying anything. We're just kind of hanging there. Me and RL are talking, and about 10 minutes later, he looks at me and goes, "Hey man, down there at the window, did you just see?" And I went, "Yes, you saw it too? Man, I thought I was just tripping out or something." But we both saw it, so we get up and we walk down to the room immediately and open the door, which was unlocked. And we went in and we're looking for, we see the ghost shows on TV. So we're looking for the cold spot and snooping around the room and looking under the covers. I looked under the bed. I went in the closet. There was no sign of anything. So we spent about 5 minutes ratting around in there and hanging out. And I said, well, let's wrap it up. So I went down to my death by bludgeoning room and go in and pulled out a railroad magazine again, right? A pretty simple animal, creature of habit. Pull out a railroad magazine. I'm checking it out. And I just nodded off, trying not to think not too much about the blood that must have been spattered all over the walls and where exactly the bludgeoned corpse was laying on the floor and all that stuff. I'm trying to keep that out of my mind, reading stories of the railroad. And I just woke up the next day completely undisturbed, having one of the most beautiful rests that I had ever had. So I got a great night's sleep in the bludgeoned to death room. And then, of course, we went on to the next gig, which is how all these stories end, no matter what the subject is. Then, of course, you go on to the next gig. And I hope your next gig is really awesome. I hope you have a great Halloween. Watch an old horror movie for me, will you? Something from the 30s or 40s by Universal, maybe with Lugosi or Chaney or any of that stuff, to kind of put you in the vibe, the old school vibe, because scary things are old. Peace out until next month. Tune back in for another Road Dog, y'all. Bye-bye.